got to figure out which pieces to put on the field here in Week 18. Time for starts and sits with Michael F. Florio, where that decision, who is actually playing, who has something to play for, weighs in huge this week, Mike.
It's the most important thing this week, which is, again, why you should not have fantasy championships in Week 18. But if you do, Jared Goff has a lot to play for this week, and as the Lions showed us last week, even if they don't, they're going to play all of their guys anyway. In the last month, Goff has averaged 29 fantasy points per game, and I know you might see the Vikings are a tough matchup. I don't think there's a defense out there that could slow down this version of the Lions offense. And the last time he played the Vikings, threw for 2 touchdowns, got them for 19 fantasy points. And this one is at home. So yeah, I think you start Jared Goff. I also want to start Bo Nix this week. Joe Burrow won out on Saturday last week, but Bo Nix balled out on a national stage and showed everyone that he belongs in this league. 21 plus fantasy points in 2 straight. He's been giving you QB6 numbers since week 5 on. And a win clinches the playoff berth while the Chiefs are resting all of their starters. So the Broncos will be aggressive against a Chiefs defense that, well, you're probably not going to know a lot of the names out there.
So a quarterback that has to get a win to get the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, a quarterback that has to win to keep his team's hopes alive in the postseason. Are we sitting somebody that literally has no reason to play football?
Yes, we are. We are sitting Josh Allen this week, and you might be like, the QB2 and potential MVP, why would I be sitting him? Well, Josh Allen is going to start this week. The Bills have come out and said his start streak is important to him, but they're going to pull him after just a handful of plays. So you won't get a notification that Josh Allen is out this week. It won't have an O next to his name, like say Patrick Mahomes, or if you're on a daily site, it won't have that out marker next to him, but trust me, you cannot play him. You might get less than a fantasy point if you do, which, again, is the number 1 reason why you should not have your fantasy football championships in Week 18, because Josh Allen got you there, and now you're there without one of your top options.
Yeah, as we go to running backs, one of the top options, the best option at running back, we already discussed, no Saquon Barkley. Who can people trust to start this week in Week 18?
Bucky Irving. He has just been amazing as of late. 13 plus fantasy points in 6 of 7 games. He's top 17 in 5 of those. When he played the Saints in his first matchup, he went for over 100 yards, scored a touchdown, and gave you 18.5 fantasy points. And in their last 2 games alone, the Saints, 300 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns allowed to running backs. And as I've been saying all show, the Bucs need to win this week to win the division, so you could expect their starters out there. And then to me, I'm starting Amir Abdullah, who I believe is the biggest unsung hero in this season. He's averaged 19 fantasy points per game in the fantasy playoffs. He scored more points in the fantasy playoffs than Saquon Barkley did, than Derrick Henry did. The list goes on. And it's not the best matchup for him this week, but Chargers do allow a good amount of passes to running backs, and his pass game usage, to me, just keeps him in play.
All right, so let's go over to a sit at the running back position, and I'm cheating, looking ahead here. This guy's team might play against a good matchup defense. What?
Yeah, the issue, it's Najee Harris. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm sitting Najee Harris this week is because if the Ravens win in the game before the Steelers play, the Steelers have nothing to play for in this game. So my question is, how much are we going to see Najee Harris? Look, it's a good matchup, but also Najee's averaged 7 fantasy points per game in his last 4 games, and the Bengals have everything on the line in this week. We know how high-powered their offense is. So if it gets out of hand, if the Bengals jump up ahead, I'm thinking the Steelers, it could be Jaylen Warren if they're playing in catch-up mode, but 2, how much are they really going to leave their starters out there? It's a big question and not one I want to tie my fantasy hopes to.
You need information for Week 18. We got to get pass catchers here on Starts and Sits with Michael F. Florio. Go to NFL.com/start-sit for the full list, Mike. But let's start with these wide receivers. Who can we rely on? Who can we trust?
Look, we have Skinny Batman in Philly. We need a nickname like that for this tandem in Minnesota. I don't know, Iron Man, Skinny Iron Man, something like that. Because Jordan Addison has just been eating as of late. 13 or more fantasy points in 4 straight in 6 of his last 7. 7 receiving touchdowns in that span. And he gets the Lions this week, who have allowed the 2nd most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. The only team that allows more is the Vikings. So this is literally the best matchup Jordan Addison could have because he can't play his own team. Scorefest, number 1 seed on the line, all of that. You want as much exposure to this game as you can possibly get. And then I've been talking the Bucks up all day today. I'm going to round it out with Jalen McMillan here, who has 16 or more fantasy points in 4 straight. In that span, he has averaged 20 fantasy points per game. He has 6 touchdowns in those 4 games with at least 1 in each game. The Saints have allowed the 5th most yards to wide receivers. Oh, and if you haven't heard, the Bucks, they have something to play for this week because they need to win the division. So I want players like that with reason to play this week.
Yeah, it's value. It's a theme that we've discussed all show long about having something to play for. On the other side, we're probably sitting a wide receiver that has no reason to play at all.
None. And I don't know why Chris Olave is pushing to come back. He wanted to play last week. He's really pushing to try to get back this week. But as you see there, has not played since week 9. The production wasn't Chris Olave-esque. And then he has Spencer Rattler at quarterback right now, who has thrown 3 touchdowns this year compared to 5 interceptions and routinely is below 200 passing yards. So in daily, and if you're playing week 18, whatever the case may be, I'm getting away from Chris Olave.
All right, so let's go over now that we sat our wide receiver to the tight end spot. And let's bring him back. Let's discuss him more for Laquan's sake.
This is for us. Like, for me, us two, Marcus, for Laquan, it's Jonnu Smith. Like, why would you not play him? And I know you're probably like, yeah, of course I'm playing him. He scored 11 or more in 7 straight. He's averaged just under 16 in that span. Last week against the Jets, touchdown, 13.4 fantasy points. All of that. We know he's great. But stay tuned because we are in the process of figuring it out, but we are going to stream live from our podcast studio one of these days upcoming soon where we are dyeing Laquan's hair blonde, strawberry blonde. He's already bought it, but yeah, that's going to be a whole bunch of fun.
And so now that we've got Jonnu in the game, who are we putting on our bench?
Sit Hunter Henry. Look, I've been a huge Hunter Henry supporter, but he did score 0 last week and has fewer than 7 in 2 of his last 3. This game is beneficial for the Patriots to lose to secure the number 1 seed, and they've already talked about, quote-unquote, protecting Drake May in this one. Means he could get Jacoby Brissett, and Henry was not viable when he had Brissett earlier this season. And then I'm sitting Kyle Pitts. Look, I know he caught it. I legitimately laughed out loud when he caught that long touchdown last week because it's like, yeah, of course, once everyone with Kyle Pitts is long eliminated, that's when you have your best play of the season. But less than 3 fantasy points in 5 of his last 8 games. Look, I've been chasing it for 4 years. Do you think one big play is going to be enough for me to come back? It's not. I'm staying far, far away from Kyle Pitts this week.